Hello and welcome back to Petra Publications. Today we're going to be looking at this beautiful 9-volume set of the complete works of John Witherspoon. Now, John Witherspoon is a lesser-known theologian, a lesser-known politician, actually. He's a great man in American history and great man of the 1700s. He was a signer of the Declaration of Independence, and I'm just going to give you a little bit of information about him. I think, and then I'll get into what this is. I think that the works did not exactly describe him well. There was a lot of confusion for me as I was working my way through them. The last volume is a biography or a memoir of him, which was helpful, and I almost feel like this should be read first, but I'm going to get into that in just a moment. So, as I said earlier, he was a signer of the Declaration of Independence from New Jersey, and we don't know this for sure, but a lot of people attribute the last sentence of the Declaration of Independence to John Witherspoon. And if I didn't say, he was New Jersey, but he is attributed, or this sentence is attributed to him, where it says, "And for the support of this declaration, with firm alliance, on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives and fortunes and our sacred honor." So many people attribute that divine providence line to him, and say that he was the one that added that to the Declaration of Independence. Like I said, there's no way of knowing that for sure, but as you read his works, his lectures, especially the ones on Divinity, it makes a lot of sense how some scholars have said that he wrote that part. That makes a lot of sense. Now, as for another little bit of history about him, he was the first president of Princeton, or the College of New Jersey. He also was, because he was a politician, because he was a teacher, he was the teacher of Robert E. Lee's father, which is a very fascinating connection there. He also met the Wesleys and Whitefield. He knew personally Benjamin Franklin and George Washington and worked alongside them. Let's see, what else did he do? He was the first governor of New Jersey. And so that's a little bit of background behind him. I believe he had a lot of children. Only 2 or 3 actually survived into adulthood. And I think his oldest daughter died at like 20-something, very young. And so he always struggled with that because his children were dying. So that's a little bit about him, and now we will take a look at each volume, and I will give a short review of each of them. So first you have Volume 1, which is, it contains an essay on justification and a treatise on regeneration, and this is a very good book. Again, as far as reading, I don't know if it was this publication that caused this, or if it was just the way he set up his works, or Dr. Green actually compiled and wrote the memoir, but originally. So I don't know if it was him that made this like that the case, but it was so hard. It was like comprehension was easy, but it felt like I was supposed to know something about him that I didn't know, which is why I think reading the memoir first would be helpful. Or reading it alongside the works also maybe would have been a better option. I don't know. But I did find that very interesting. I felt like they knew something that I didn't, and that I was supposed to know it. So it was a very strange feeling. But very good book. And then Volume 2 is sermons on the leading truths of the gospel, forming a connected system of these truths. And so this book is completely sermons, which is awesome. And I want to go back and read some of these sermons with the knowledge that I now have of Witherspoon. With all the knowledge that I lacked before, this really meant nothing to me. And so I want to go back again and read these, but as I recall, I had no theological disagreement with them. And again, the providence of God, the protection of the divine providence was very clear, very broadly spoken of, or boldly spoken of. Volume 3 is a containing sermons on doctrinal and practical subjects for the people of God. Again, Volume 3, completely made of sermons. And again, no problem here. Also want to read this one again, but didn't have any disagreements with him there. Thought that was a very good book. Volume 4, Sermons to Instruct Ministers and Edify the Church. And this volume, as I recall, was very good. He has certain stuff specific to the minister and certain stuff specific to the people of God. And I found each one of those really great, very scriptural, very true. Volume 5, Final Sermons and Warning about the Stage, Acting, and Ecclesiastical Moderates. So this volume is when things really start to get interesting as you're reading Witherspoon. You finish up his sermons here. Then he has an address to the senior class, which was really interesting. A serious inquiry to the nature and effects to the stage. And that was a very interesting read as well, where he got into why the stage is bad, why specifically for Christians, why they should not attend theaters and go to that sort of thing, why it's worldly, why it's bad for the Christian, why it is a bad idea for any man of God to be seen there and to be there and to absorb that kind of stuff. And I think though I disagree with him on the stage part, I think a lot of the principles that were laid down there can be applied to, say, movies or YouTube videos that we watch now. Then he had a letter respecting play actors, which was a shorter thing, still very harsh on those people. And then he had ecclesiastical characteristics, which, as I recall, were very... Was that his first... Let's see, give me one moment. I forgot. Let's see. 179. So the ecclesiastical characteristics was his first satirical work, and they were hilarious. Each one, they were set up in maxims. There were 13 of them, and they were awful, as he was making fun of the church, basically. And really great stuff, really offensive. And there are 13, as I said, and this actually, as we're looking at this, that reminds me of a mistake that the publishers made. It goes 11, 12, and 12 again. Let's see. 11, or maybe it was two 11s. Let's see. Maxim 11, Maxim 12. Yeah, here we go. See, Maxim 12 here, Maxim 12 there. So not that big of a deal. That's probably the biggest mistake I had seen in these. A lot of the other mistakes were in the footnotes, where they're easy to slide in and no one would ever notice them. One thing said somebody was born in 1706, and then another said that he died in 176. So, very fascinating. Obviously a typo, not that big of a deal. but there were a few mistakes in this as well. Volume 6 is the history of a corporation of servants, lectures on moral philosophy, and lectures on eloquence. And this volume I found really quite fascinating. And again, this is more secular work. This has nothing really to do with religion, and yet still the protection of divine providence is well found within this volume. It was also fascinating to see, to sit beneath this brilliant doctor as if you were sitting in his class. I love that. And his lectures on, I believe it was moral philosophy, he didn't intend for publication, and yet they were published anyway. In fact, he threatened to sue a man if they were published. Yeah, he threatened to sue a man if they were published, the publisher that was trying to do that. And so he didn't. And then after he died, they were published anyway, even though that was not really what he wanted. And the only reason that was because they were not finished. Witherspoon did not get to finish them, and so he didn't want them published unfinished. They were shorter than he wanted to. It's basically just his notes if he were ever to teach those lessons. And so it didn't, as the editor said, did him no harm to publish those works. It didn't do any harm to him. So they didn't see any harm in doing it. Volume 7, his lectures on divinity, lectures on education and marriage, plus other items of interest. This one I would highly recommend. This was probably one of my favorites. His lectures on divinity were almost a systematic theology within there, and also, again, the protection of divine providence, again found within the lessons here. In fact, there was a lesson, I believe, strictly for that, but all of them wonderful. He has even one here on the covenant of grace and the constitution of the covenant, which were very helpful. Again, very scriptural. I found no issue with them at all. Letters on education, letters on marriage, addressed to the inhabitants of Jamaica, speech in the Synod of Glasgow, and a humble supplication, speech in the General Assembly, letter to Scott's Magazine, and ignorance of the British with respect to America. So this one was a mix of religious and secular writings of his, and I really liked that volume. That was a good one. And then you get to volume 8, which contains an essay on money, speeches in Congress with other writings, including a number of letters. And this volume also very fascinating. You learn a lot about Witherspoon in this volume just by reading his works. The essay on money, I did it again, essay on money, was quite fascinating, I found, with because I thought it was going to be on what's the best way to spend money, what's the best way to save money, that kind of stuff. But no, it was about how America administered their money, or how America decided the price of money, the cost of money, the value is the word I'm looking for. And what's interesting also is in his biography, it was said that he did not do very well with his money. He spent everything. And so fascinating. I would have thought that he would have been more conservative with his money, but instead he was out spending every dime of it. So this volume, another really great one. And the letters are always very interesting. It really shows the heart of a man or a woman, depending on who you're reading. But here you have letters to Benjamin Franklin and to Washington. You have different, all those different speeches, the essay, Thoughts on American Liberty. Now that was a good read. on the controversy about independence, another good one. All of those really quite good. Yeah, I have no issue with that either. Really, all of Witherspoon, again, apart from feeling like you're supposed to have some sort of pre-knowledge of Witherspoon, his works are really, really good. And then you have this Volume 9, it's the Life of John Witherspoon, and a little bit of information about the author of this volume, and also the collector, editor of the works here. And yeah, learned a lot about him here. What I found interesting was there was stuff in the biography that I, again, feel like should be read before. For instance, in this is the complete works of Augustus Toplady in one volume. They started this with a memoir of the author. They started this with a little bit of his journal, and it really put you in front of who he was and what he believed, and his emotions, his thoughts on a lot of different things. It puts you right in front of that and puts that right in front of you. Whereas here, you're tossed in and you don't know anything about him or anything like that, and you're just stuck trying to figure out what does he mean by this. This would make more sense if I knew him, if I knew what he was trying to say. But apart from that, really the works are quite good, and they're good for two things. One, theology. They're solid theology. He was a great theologian, great teacher, but they're also great historically. He was a great man of American history, a great politician, again, signer of the Declaration of Independence, so you can find his name at the bottom there. And so yeah, on both fronts, if you're reading it as a historical work or if you're reading it as a religious work, in either case, it's well worth your time. For me, it was a mix of both. I was able to knock two birds out with one stone, or kill two birds with one stone, and quite an interesting read. So if you have time to sit down and read these, I do recommend them. There might be other things that are better worth your time, but these are still definitely up there. So I hope this video was encouraging to you or a blessing to you in some way. If it was, comment that down below. I'd love to hear from you. If you have any questions or anything, feel free to reach out and ask. I've got a website where you can do that. Email me directly from the website, or just email me straight from my email, which will be down below. So either way, I'll get back to you as soon as I can. But I hope that you have a blessed day, and I will see you, Lord willing, very soon.